Welcome to the first episode of Line of Fire. I'm John Tutungal from UTD TV, your host for this episode. Today, we're joined by two student media leaders, Sheila Dang, the managing editor of The Mercury, and Michelle Ofiwe, the assistant music director for Radio UTD. Welcome to the panel. For our first panel, we're also joined by Charlie Hannigan, Vice President of Student Government, and James Paul, Resident District Manager for Chartwells. Chartwells, as we all know, is the leading provider of dining services on campus. Welcome. For our first panel, we are going to be discussing the dining expansions on campus. And as I've understood it, it has expanded significantly. So I'm going to hand the mic over to James. And James, you're going to tell us about what Chartwells has done for this new fall semester in terms of dining expansions?
In terms of dining expansion for what we're doing now or the plans for moving forward?
What have you done that's different from last year?
Okay, certainly. On the different venues, I have to look up and do by different venues. For the dining hall, one thing that we did was to change the way our layout is to pull our guests into the servery space so that we didn't have so much of a bottleneck. Our marketing director, Allison Jenkins, also made sure that we had plenty of signage so students knew where things were so that they can help themselves get through the line faster. Big things like telling them where vegetarian options are, all the way down to very small things. Here's where the forks, the knives, and the spoons are, helped us to get that space a little bit better flow to that space. Chick-fil-A, Subway, and Papa John's, we've opened up cashier stands to get people through a little bit faster. We've added signage. We tried to simplify some of the choices in the Comet Cafe space so that guests could have a lot of choice but not take a lot of time to make that choice to help them to get through. We've also changed our menu in the pub. We've simplified it a little bit. We've gotten a culinarian in the back to make sure that the quality of the food is there. And we're working on training in the front to make sure that the guest experience is a lot different from what students told us it needed to be based on last year. Overall, we've really just tried to focus on the guest, looking at the experience from their eyes and asking ourselves, what can we do to make it a little bit better, a little bit more friendly for our students?
So you are extremely sensitive to the students' needs.
That's the only reason that we're here.
Wonderful. I want to ask Michelle, you interact with a lot of freshmen. What's the general response of the students these days?
They seem to love the dining hall a lot. They kind of consider it to be a lot similar to what they experienced during the orientation, which is always a good thing since they always tell me so much about how they like the food there. They're definitely used to having the more options now, which is definitely a lot different from what a high school cafeteria would be like, I think. And they enjoy how easy it is to get through as compared to what they heard last year, or what they might have thought that a college cafeteria might look like. And they like knowing what they're going to eat beforehand. I know one of the big things you guys did was help with making that transition to offering more options and then giving them a way to chart what they were going to eat in advance. And that's definitely a real help for people, especially for freshmen who are trying to work their way through as quickly as possible.
What do you think of, has the students' response been to the new meal plans?
Some of them heard a little bit about what the meal plans were going to be beforehand, so they're definitely still working their way through it from what I understand. But those who have purchased meal plans have been very happy with them. They know how much they're going to be able to eat, and so they're good at planning around when they'll be able to do that and how much they will eat throughout the week.
Wonderful. James, I wanted to ask you a question. This year, I think for the first time, we don't have the unlimited meal plan option. Would you care to elaborate on why
Absolutely.
that was taken?
Two reasons why. A lot of people, when you say unlimited, you think, wow, that's what I'm going to be in that dining hall 17 times a day and I'm going to just eat Chartwells out of house and home. It's not going to happen. You really get caught up in your schoolwork and friends, social organizations, if you participate, student government or social clubs. And so really the day-to-day life takes over. And what we found as an organization coast to coast is that there's more unhappy feeling at the end of the semester to say, either you contributed to my freshman 15 because I was in there eating all the time, or I didn't really feel like I didn't meet the challenge of all you care to eat all the time. So what that really winds up being is about a 19 meal plan. People come in about that, for 7 days. A 19 meal plan is about what students want, really want. And so after listening to feedback, that's what we converted to this year. So you probably still are coming in the same amount of times, but the word unlimited is taken from what we have. And that's all.
That's more of a marketing decision.
It's a marketing. It's
Marketing decision. Interesting. Sheila, what have you heard as being a member of the Mercury about the options that students have on campus for those who are not on the dining meal plan? Who have to eat at the pub, or at Outtakes, or the Comic Cafe.
Yeah, actually with the pub specifically, you said that the menu had been simplified a little bit, but from what I noticed, I don't know if you guys have noticed this too, but it seems also significantly shortened. Pita and hummus bread specifically has been cut, and I know that's also been popular among my friends. So what was the decision to kind of alter the menu?
The two big things that we looked at. We looked at the technical term, the load of the menu. Last year, let's say out of the appetizer section, there were 10 things. 8 of them came out of the fryer. So that was horrible from my standpoint, because that meant that I either couldn't execute very well, or I had to put food to the side to say, okay, I think you're going to order this, so I'll make it and I'll hold it. Well, it's not the freshest. So we went back and we looked at what could we do, what equipment did we have, what could we do to maximize an offering using those different pieces of equipment so that we could keep the flow of food coming from me to you quickly. The other important thing that we did was to look at sales. And there are some diehard people on some diehard items, but overall we look at to see what did people vote with their wallet, and let's keep that item. I'm a culinarian from by trade, and so there are 1,000 different ways to make a hamburger. But the pub burger was a sacred thing, and you voted with your wallet. So we did not change the pub burger. On the other hand, things that we experimented on based on what we saw, it's not set in stone. Shadea and Debbie and that team in the pub, they're always open to listen to what could we do for you, and we are bringing those things in as limited time offers. And if you really say, yes, this is what we want, it'll make its way back. This was just our best guess to be able to do what we thought the best thing that you wanted us to do. We didn't do the best job last year of getting things out quickly. This year, we're so proud of our ticket times. When you walk into the pub, it's actually what you see. Yesterday, our ticket time was 8 minutes.
And while the number of items on the menu has decreased, the quality of the food that's on the menu has increased by a long shot. So it's wonderful that the items that you do get are delicious.
Charlie, since you brought that up, I remember that last year, student government took a lot of trouble to conduct surveys. I was wondering if you could, maybe tell us a little bit about the results of those surveys, including the one that happened on September 9th.
So we've conducted quite a few surveys about the pub and gotten a lot of information about Chartwell's in general. The number one thing is that people aren't dissatisfied with Chartwell's entirely. The dining hall is a huge success. So is the coffee stand that's in JSOM. People love that. They grab and go the same way. The pub was something that needed to be worked on. Reasons why: food quality wasn't as high as they wanted. Ticket times weren't as slow or weren't as fast as they wanted. Things that people liked about the pub: the atmosphere, the way people get to interact in there, that you get to go in and study. We believe Chartwell's has started to improve upon those items, that the ticket times have been reduced significantly, that the quality of food has gone up, and that they're so responsive to student needs. One question that we did have brought up was whether the pub should become a full-service restaurant or whether it should remain the style that it is. The response that we got back after over 400 responses was a 55% of the people saying yes and 45% of people saying no. Whether that happens in the future is still remaining to be decided.
A quick question about the surveys. Do you have any idea about the kind of demographics that come out throughout the surveys?
So we try to keep our surveys relatively anonymous so people feel comfortable answering whatever they'd like. The little information that we do gather, our gender, which is split about evenly for whatever survey that we do, and classification. One thing that we were definitely surprised about was that so many graduate students came out to Welcome Week. So we had a number of graduate students respond to the pub survey, and we were lucky enough to get their opinion on the pub and dining in general, especially since typically they're a hard group to reach out to.
And John, I want to interject. One thing that happens from the survey is that we take that and then we step back and we look at how can we implement that, because the pub is not only a restaurant space, it is also mixed space for students. I want students to come in and feel comfortable. So we have to take the full service aspect of it and say, well, if we do have full service and someone's standing there taking an order, would you feel comfortable coming in to finish your English paper? Would you feel comfortable coming in and looking at your music work? And so we have to balance what that concept is and what we need it to be in terms of everyone feeling welcomed and supported in that space.
James, thank you for clarifying that.
And that devotion to the student perspective is truly what's making Chartwell so successful this semester, and I'm sure what will be successful in the future.
Thank you, Charlie. It'll be important to let all students know that if you would like to express your opinion or would like to inform Chartwells about what you'd like to see on the menu, do not hesitate to contact student government or Chartwells directly through their website. Thank you so much for joining this first panel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to take a quick break and come back for our second panel, which is going to be a discussion on the new parking garage. Stay tuned.
Today we will be showing you how to make a smoothie. You will need strawberries, bananas, honey, vanilla yogurt, and ice. First, remove the top of the strawberries and cut them in half. Peel the bananas and roughly slice them. Put the ice, strawberries, and bananas into a blender. Blend them until they're well combined. Add the yogurt and the honey to the blender and blend until the mixture is smooth. Pour the smoothie into a cup and serve it while it's cold. You can add other delicious fruits to make this healthy recipe your own. Have fun and keep cooking.
Welcome back to the first episode of Line of Fire. This is our second panel of the day. Joining Sheila, Michelle, and Charlie is Mindy Tu. Mindy Tu is a business and marketing major, and she's also responsible for the university parking app, UPark. Now, UPark has won a lot of state and national level awards. Would you like to elaborate a little bit more about UPark and give us a historical context about it?
Yeah, definitely. So this started in about year 2011, 2 years ago. I was in a social media class with a professor I was really fond of. He was a great professor here at UTD. His name is Dr. Savoy. And during that time, we had a social media project where the entire class was involved with the parking campaign that we all were very fond of, because all of us, of course, had to park at UTD, and we all had our own different perspectives on how it was good or bad and what we could improve on it. And so what we did was we made a social media platform of a website that had Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook all integrated in one. It was called UTD Park It. And we also had a SurveyMonkey online that we had a really good response rate from. It was about 200 or 300 students on campus that responded to that survey as well. And the purpose of that survey was to really outline what the problems of parking was at UTD. And the students were able to give suggestions as to what they would want to improve. And so we got a lot of great research in that. And the UTD Park It campaign was really viral at that time. And essentially that was the beginning of my idea to create a parking app that would really aid universities and any other establishments that had parking issues with massive parking. So.
Wonderful. When you designed the app, did you think it would go viral?
No, I actually didn't. My initial plan was to really compete in the business idea competition sponsored by the IIE here. And eventually it became pretty well known. I had a YouTube video of a prototype I made of the smartphone application. And I guess a lot of students saw it through my classes and just through publications that were made from, about my idea. And eventually it became to compete in other competitions, which also made it more well known, I think. So.
Oh, that's good to know. Speaking of parking issues, Sheila, we opened up new lots and specifically the new parking garage. What are your thoughts on the subject?
Well, I was a little bit disappointed that the garage only has 1 green level and 2 gold, and so I feel like it's a bit of an obvious push that they're pushing the more expensive gold permit, especially with Lot J behind near the activity center, repainting some of those spots to be gold instead of green. The availability of green is not there, and I think it's obvious that with the gold levels being usually full in the parking garage, students are having to pay the $175 for a gold permit because the availability is there.
Then again, we're extremely fortunate at UTD to have some of the cheapest parking of any college campus in the country. If you look at big schools like the University of Washington or the University of Texas, you wouldn't be as fortunate to have access to such cheap parking, even if you were to buy the gold permit.
Well, yes, relative cost, it's cheaper, but with the cost is increasing, pretty rapidly, and that I've seen.
Michelle, do you stay on campus?
I do. I live on campus.
So you have no issues with parking?
Not at all, but my job does allow me to come in contact with a lot of residents and a lot of students who live on campus as well, who have to deal with parking and transportation to and from class. And residential lots have been opening a lot more, but from what I hear, mostly students are still going for the green passes, and so that definitely has an effect on where they can park and how they get to and from other buildings on campus. From what I understand from friends who drive and from students who drive, they're more likely to go with the cheaper passes, but they're still really concerned about what the future parking for them will be. Just with as Sheila said, with the different spots for green closing and a lot of major parking lots around campus, it's really difficult and really cutting into students' time when it comes to going to classes or heading off to work, because just finding different places to park is so difficult. And I have known students to kind of cross lines a little bit when it comes to parking, parking in a place that is not specifically green or things like that.
Mindy, since you started the app and the situation we're in right now, do you think it's gotten better?
I think it's improved a little bit. I like how the garage has that LED screen in front of it that tells you how many spots are open. But I've seen students that told me that it's actually, actually is pretty erroneous. It doesn't really tell you exactly in real time if it's, certain spots are open accurately. So, in a sense, it's kind of useless if it's not really going to be accurate in real time. As also with the parking garage, they had this garage, but at the same time they took a step back by taking all this parking away near the School of Management. They had this entire parking lot, and so in a sense they're building more, but it costs a lot of money. I understand that's a big issue, but really a lot of people still are very unhappy with parking here. Like he said, we are pretty blessed to have pretty cheap parking. It's just a big hassle because UTD is a pretty big commuter school. People at schools at my brother's at University of California at Berkeley, and they just pretty much have to handle it on their own. They just don't even bring their cars because they're just gonna they know they're gonna have to walk. They walk like 20 minutes to class, and that's just the way it is. That's in the bigger schools, you just got to sacrifice. But of course we are a smaller school, and we want things our way kind of. So I'm sure we can all agree that it's still kind of an issue for us. I live on campus, so I actually have some problems finding parking sometimes during the day. There have been problems with non-residents getting residential stickers. And it's really hard to track that because all you do when you apply for this parking sticker is that you just tell them your car model and your license plate, and you can just get anyone's car model and license plate, and they really can't trace that. So,
Charlie, would you like to address that issue? Is the student government going to look into maybe verifying insurance permits on the car so that we know that the student who is actually on the permit is the one who owns the car?
It's definitely something that we can look into. We have a wonderful relationship with parking and transportation at UTD, and they're always willing to help students out. So I'm sure if we bring it up, it's something that can be handled quickly.
Well, actually, I'm pretty sure they know about it. We actually had discussion with that when I was doing my parking movement. It's just very hard to track, no matter how you put it.
So it's been going on for 2 years.
Yes, this has been going on since the beginning of parking stickers. It's been a long-term issue, and there's really no way around it, quite honestly, I feel like, unless you make it completely automated. So.
Michelle, Sheila, have you heard any such stories?
Well, with the resident parking, have they split the permits between the residence halls and the apartments, where if you lived in the residence hall, you have to park in the residence hall parking?
Yes, we do actually do that. We can't, if you live in the apartments or you're planning to park in a space around the apartments, we can't write permits for that. So we, sorry, go ahead.
One thing that's a perceived issue for the University Commons area is that there isn't enough parking. However, they have opened up a gravel lot across from Synergy that not a lot of students know about. So if there is trouble with parking over on the University Commons side, they can go across the road and hopefully grab a spot or two.
I think the main issue is that even if they get a spot, not always are the parking spots all taken. It's just the fact that they're not close enough to their classes or wherever they're going to. So that's what the big issue is, really, distance. And I think distance and convenience and time is a big issue for students. So.
Peter Walker addressed that issue by saying that we should build up instead of out to make sure that distances aren't as much of an issue. Hopefully the planned additional 2 parking garages will help with that.
Is the cost for the 2 additional parking garages, is that going to come from student fees, or is UTD going to foot the bill for that?
I'm not 100% sure. I apologize.
Oh, that's okay. The Mercury had reported.
Yes, I believe the Regents approved the funding to come from the system to pay for the garages, and then the parking permit fees will kind of recoup those costs too.
Okay, so if the students wanted to hold a referendum as to if the parking permit should be used to recoup the cost of building these 2 new garages, would you be open to that?
Well, I can't speak for myself or as student government. If the students are interested in something, student government's interested in representing them. So if a referendum were to come up, we'd definitely be the ones pushing and supporting that, especially through administration. Currently, the Board of Regents is very hesitant to approve any tuition increases. However, they are an effective way of funding things.
Thank you, Charlie and Mindy, for joining us for the second panel of the first episode of Line of Fire. Up ahead, we'll be joined by professors from the Jindal School of Management to discuss what the Affordable Care Act means to us as students. We'll be right back.
I am Ian Owen, and I'm the station manager of UTD TV. This coming year, we plan to bring in many new members, keep them entertained, make them have fun, but yet still get our projects done for the school and make everybody happy. A student should join UTD TV for many reasons. If you have a passion for cameras, scripting, gaining knowledge, skills, videography, news reporting, filming, or if you just need to be social, interact with more people, find new friends. I mean, the list goes on and on. So I'm Ian, I'm the station manager, and I hope to see you soon.
Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. Joining Sheila and Michelle on the panel now are Dr. John McCracken and Dr. Michael Deegan. Dr. McCracken is a healthcare management professor in the Jindal School of Management and an adjunct faculty member at UT Southwestern, in addition to being a former investment banker in a major Wall Street firm. He also helped draft parts of the Affordable Care Act. And Dr. Deegan is a practicing physician for 40 years and a professor in the Healthcare Leadership and Innovation program at the Jindal School of Management. He has also served on many physician leadership and management positions, including as the executive president of the Texas Health Resources, that is North Texas' largest nonprofit healthcare provider system. Thank you both for coming on the show today. The debate about Obamacare is all over the news right now. In fact, people were counting down the seconds to when Obamacare would come in and the whole government shutdown. So I'm going to start by asking Michelle here, what do you think about it as a student?
About Obamacare or the shutdown?
Well, the Obamacare, because it's important to kind of figure out it.
As a student, I find it very helpful. Granted, there is a lot of legal jargon, a lot of things about Obamacare I don't understand. But I will admit, from what I've read and what I've seen so far, what I've studied, it's very helpful for people my age who currently don't have insurance or don't have enough insurance to cover them. I know a lot of people and a lot of friends who have had injuries in the past that they haven't been able to cover. Either they couldn't get it onto their parents' insurance or they couldn't afford the treatments themselves, and they find it very helpful. For me, I definitely love some parts of it. I'm a little confused about other parts of it, but for the most part, I'm very happy that I actually have insurance that I can afford and that I am able to have and use as a backup.
If I were to ask you which part, you said you had a couple of parts that you don't understand. If you could take the most important of those parts, which one would it be?
Well, one of the bigger concerns here right now for people who already have insurance and the way Obamacare will affect them. Mostly I've heard that a lot of people are upset because they feel that they might have to pay extra for the insurance they already have, or that they might be forced to change the insurance they already have. And I'm not sure exactly how that works. My parents have had their insurance for a couple of years and they're a little confused about that as well, so we've been doing a little research, but it's still kind of murky, and I'm sure it's murky for a lot of other citizens. One other question I had is what exactly happens for students after they turn 26, and if they're going to be asked to purchase insurance of their own, or if they have to pay a tax or fee.
And Sheila, how about you? What are your thoughts on Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act?
I have a few mixed feelings about it, as I believe most Americans probably do. I do like the individual mandate that says that everybody must have health insurance by next year. But I'm also a little bit concerned about cost. My family and I looked up the estimates of what health insurance would cost for the four of us, and we're in a position where we're able to pay that, but when I think about other students, other families who might not be able to, it's kind of a concern, and I think cost is just a big concern for most people with this law.
Dr. McCracken, you have drafted parts of the law, and I was wondering, as an insider, how much did they look into the role of students or young adults?
Well, first, the law was drafted in the basement of the Congress by attorneys, so that they were responsible for it. I, like many others, formally commented on it before it was, after the regulations, as the regulations were being drafted. Young people are essential to the operation of this because young people are generally tend to be healthy, and you need healthy people in the insurance pool in order to distribute the risk. If only the old or sick sign up, it's not going to work. So the law requires and is hopeful that a large number of young people who are healthy will sign up.
If for any reason a significant percentage of younger people did not, or students did not choose to sign up and decide to just pay the fine instead, what happens then?
Well, first off, it's going to take 18 months, maybe 2 years, before we really know what's going to happen, before we really understand how this law is going to shake out. It's got a lot of moving parts. It's very complex. My biggest concern is, can you actually implement it? That is, the data systems and data infrastructure required to verify your citizenship, criminal history, income, and all the different things that are required is simply not in place. It doesn't work. It requires connecting 7 federal agencies with 51 state Medicaid agencies, and that infrastructure is just not there. So in the first year, at least, people are going to have to self-attest to all of this stuff. Is that going to be accurate? Is that going to happen? There's a pretty good likelihood, based upon past experience, that there'll be some real problems if you have to rely on self-attestation. So the real question is, can you actually implement it? And that is something that won't be known for, as I said, 18 months to 2 years.
It's interesting that they would actually have to wait that long to figure out, or at least come up with a conservative estimate of if it's actually working out.
There'd be lots of forecasts and lots of projections along the way, and thousands of news stories about it. But the fact of the matter is, it is extraordinarily complex. There's one other thing that's important here. All prior great social legislation for the last 100 years has been bipartisan in nature. Both the Republicans and Democrats have agreed on that something was needed and agreed on the drafting. Medicare is a great example of that. It was bipartisan. So that when the inevitable problems and glitches showed up, you can go back in and open the legislation and correct what was broken, what was wrong. In this case, the Affordable Care Act is extremely partisan. So as a consequence, you can't go back in and open up the legislation to repair the things that inevitably are not going to work. So again, it's going to be problematic how this will roll out under that circumstance. It's the first time in a century that you've had major social legislation that's not bipartisan in nature, and that's a very important point.
Considering the fact that it is bipartisan and partisan, and some people are not sure which side they're on, I'd like to find out, as a physician, what are your thoughts on this?
On what specifically?
On the Affordable Care Act, and if it's actually, Dr. McCracken mentioned that he's not even sure if it can be implemented. What, from a physician standpoint, do you foresee a problem like that?
Well, let's look at the clinical perspective a little bit, because we've been talking mainly about politics and finance. And from a clinical perspective, I think the Act has a number of constructive dimensions to it that help a variety of groups of people who have been disadvantaged in the past. People with pre-existing conditions and the ability to move from one job to the next without losing coverage. Some of the people with significant disabilities are going to receive enhanced care. Certainly those people who have no insurance, if they qualify, are going to be able to go through the exchanges to get coverage. So there are some of the positive aspects. From a physician-provider perspective in particular, the way reimbursement is going to be encouraged, particularly over time, is moving from a fee-for-service traditional model to a volume-based value. So they're going to be looking at the outcomes of care divided by the costs of care, basically a value equation that will be determined. And that's a big, major cultural change for physicians and for caregivers in general, not just doctors, but nurses and other providers, hospitals, health systems, et cetera. They're not used to working in that world. So I think we have a minimum 5 to 10 year transitional learning curve, independent of the challenges that Dr. McCracken mentioned on the fixing the tweaks and the glitches that occur in there. It's going to be a long journey if we're going to change the model for healthcare in the United States.
And speaking of the change of the model of healthcare in the United States, and based on the fact that we're the only nation in the entire G8 that doesn't have healthcare for all its citizens, what do you think, I'm going to address the question to both of you at the time, what do you think will be the main long-term systemic change that the president hopes to accomplish?
Well, I see we're in a process of evolution from medicine as a craft to medicine as a profession. Medicine as a craft has been in existence in this country since just after the Civil War all the way up to the present time, where individual craftsmen organized around their particular specialties practiced those specialties and were paid on a fee-for-service or volume basis, something that Dr. Deegan mentioned. We're changing now to a system of team-based, population-based care, where a number of different caregivers, physicians, nurses, and others work together collectively and organized around patient or disease state. So what's happening is a fundamental change in the care delivery model, not how care is financed, which is what you were referring to, but the delivery model. And that, I'm convinced, is going to be a very messy and difficult process, but we'll have a better healthcare system once we get to the other side of that.
I'll take a little bit different perspective on that. What I say will complement what Dr. McCracken said. I think the biggest shift for the population of the nation is going to be moving away from an illness-focused model to a wellness and health-based model. And everyone's going to have to participate in that, because the way our system has worked for the last 100 or more years, it's people who are ill come to hospitals, to physicians, to emergency rooms when they are not feeling well for some reason. Those patients who are generally not ill typically stay away from their doctor for months or years. Now we're switching to this population model, and we're going to have to deal with things from a more prospective and proactive way. So for example, obesity. We've got a significant challenge in the nation right now on obesity. As more and more people get caught up into these health and wellness programs, they're either going to be paying larger premiums or they're going to lose weight. They're going to pay larger premiums or they're going to stop smoking. They're going to pay larger premiums or they're going to stop using drugs. So there are a whole lot of both carrots and sticks built into this, but we've got a major change that we've got to go through from illness to wellness. And in the long term, if we have the constancy of purpose as a citizenry, our health will be better over longer periods of time, and the period of our lives when we're ill will be reduced. And that's thought to bring the cost down.
Well, so what you're really saying is I have to start eating the sticks of carrots on my plate and not throw them away and in favor of the steak. Well, that's good to know. Thank you, Dr. McCartney, Dr. Deegan, Sheila, Michelle. This has been a great discussion. Thank you all for watching. Let us know which topics you want to see covered on The Line of Fire. Email us at lineoffire@utdtv.com. We'll see you next time. Have a good evening.